Well, the Democratic Alliance will hold its Federal Congress 2020 this weekend. Party delegates will participate in an internal election to select leadership, including the federal leader, the chairperson, and 2 deputy chairpersons of Federal Council, as well as the Federal Finance Chairperson. The Congress will be held virtually, with delegates attending Congress from their homes and also from a variety of venues being made available nationwide. We're now joined via Zoom by Senior Political Science Lecturer at the University of the Western Cape, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. A very good afternoon, and thank you so much for making the time, Professor.
Good afternoon, my sister, and good afternoon to our listeners.
What are your thoughts about what's to be expected in terms of outcomes from this Congress?
Yeah, no, it will be very interesting simply because just a couple of weeks ago, the DA announced that it was going to make sure that both the race and, of course, gender will be declared invalid in terms of electing people into positions of power. So that in itself tells you that those who were in fact hoping that they were going to use those variables in order to improve their chances of winning the election, then those chances have been dashed, so to speak. So then you have that as a problem. You still also have this problem of having the conservatives within the DA, and then, of course, the progressives or the liberals within the DA. So then what is going to happen then is when people vote, they are not necessarily going to vote based on the individual's credentials, as the DA has told us, because they've been saying that as long as you qualify for the position, you will get the position, regardless of whether you are black, white, or green, and regardless of whether you are male or female. So that in itself then means that there will be something very interesting once the results are out. But I'm not optimistic, honestly speaking, especially for those who were in fact hoping that the 2 variables were going to work in their favor.
Am I hearing you correctly? Are you saying it's a foregone conclusion?
Honestly speaking, I would say so, because if, let's say, for example, we take Mbalintuli, who is one of the female leaders, some of the delegates would have wanted to vote Mbalintuli in on the basis of her being a female, not necessarily because she doesn't have the requisite skills to lead the DA. She has all of that, as much as does Steenhuisen. But then when it comes to changing the party and then repositioning the party, it would have augured well for the DA to consider gender and to consider race in order for it to appear, to appeal to the general public out there, more especially the black electorate. So now in this case, the DA has taken a formal position that it is not going to consider gender and it is not going to consider race. So then if you put all those 2 together, it's almost a foregone conclusion then that people like Steenhuisen stand a better chance. I'm not saying that he will win, but I'm saying he stands a better chance if you compare him with Mbalintuli, for example. I'm just citing these 2 because these are some of the 2 senior positions which everyone is looking at. And also given the fact that the former leader of the party, Mmusi Maimane, was a black male. So then others would have wanted to read the situation using the race card. But then in this case, the race card has fallen by the wayside after the DA has taken that decision that race is not going to matter, and of course, gender is not going to matter. So for me, that is a concern. The DA, of course, is saying that it wants people to be voted into positions of power based on their credentials, not necessarily based on these 2 variables. But I share a different opinion to that.
Yeah. One would say the Democratic Alliance has been playing a long game where they started this process way back when Mmusi Maimane was kicked out of the party. What kind of leadership would you say is needed by the DA right now?
To be honest, my sister, as far as I'm concerned, the DA is suffering from an identity crisis because we are not talking about a homogeneous DA as much as we're not talking about any homogeneous political party for that matter. But in the case of the DA, as I said earlier on, we have those who have the conservative thinking, and then we have those who have the progressive thinking. And if you look well, say the 2014 elections, for example, you might have realized that whenever the party was canvassing, the majority of the people who filled the stadium were in fact black people. And the majority of those who addressed the masses in the main were black people. But then after the DA had done well and in fact claimed position 2, and then you saw that the majority of people who were put into positions were whites. You look at the structure of the Federal Council, in fact, the outlook of the Federal Council is predominantly white. You look at the Western Cape government, which is run by the DA, the only one in the 9 provinces, is predominantly white. So that tells you then that race still matters. So I was surprised in fact when the DA said that race is not going to matter anymore, because in all likelihood, from where I'm standing, race will remain an issue, not just for the DA alone, but for other parties as well, but mainly for the DA in this case. If you compare, for example, the governing party, the ANC, and then you compare it with the DA, the governing party has the majority support being black, but of course it is a bigger church than the DA, and there are a number of whites who have occupied senior positions in the ANC. In the DA, it's a slightly different matter. If you talk of Musi Maimane, for example, at one point I became notorious when I said Musi Maimane had good intentions when he joined the DA, and he wanted to take the party forward. But unfortunately, some of his fellow leaders in the DA did not share his views. That is why he's out there in the cold right now, simply because what he wanted to do, he was not allowed to do it. There was a time, for example, when Helen Zille, for example, wanted to basically disrespect Musi Maimane. Musi Maimane was the leader of the party, but whatever he said Helen Zille should do, she refused to do it until the Federal Council had a word. Then she seemed to oblige. Even then, she was not obliging, but she seemed to oblige. And then for me, that was a concern, because it meant that Musi Maimane was the leader of the DA, duly elected, but it didn't receive the kind of respect one would have expected from a leader, especially leading a party which is the second largest in the country after the ANC.
So every party, as they make considerations about who they want to lead them, part of the consideration is to get somebody who's able to garner votes. The Democratic Alliance, being the second biggest political party in the country, of course a position that is being hotly contested by the EFF. As they look forward to the elections next year, just give us a forecast into the future. Which of the two, John Steenhuisen or Mbalintuli, will have the capability to garner votes for the Democratic Alliance as we approach the local government elections in 2021?
Yeah, that is a tough question, my sister, for one main reason. Currently, Steenhuisen is the interim leader of the DA. So there are certain things that he has done, and some members of the party, and then, of course, some of those who vote for the DA without necessarily being members of the DA, they have something to work with. In other words, they've seen him in action as the interim leader of the party. And then you take Mbalintuli, who has never been the leader of the party at this level. Of course, she is a leader in her own right, but then she has not been afforded the same opportunity as Steenhuisen. So this means then that those who would be judging Steenhuisen based on his performance while he was the interim leader will look at the positives and then give him a vote, and then they'll look at those things they didn't like, and then of course they'll give him a thumbs down. And then with Mbalintuli, one thing which I think would work for her is that she has never been there, and there is this thing of incumbency identity, that if you have been a leader of the party and you have performed in a particular way, there are people who have offended, there are people who have made happy, so then at least people have something to work with when they judge you. Now, when you come in without any political bargain, that's the term we normally use, without any political bargain, Mbalintuli in that case then will have an edge, in the sense that some of the voters might say, let's give her a chance because she has never been there, she has never made any mistake, she has never made any pronouncements that would maybe dent the image of the party. So let's afford her an opportunity and see what she is capable of. So those who think in that way then will definitely give Mbalintuli a chance. So I would say at the moment, it's not easy to say upfront whether Steenhuisen will win or whether Mbalintuli will win. It will depend what the delegates are using as a yardstick for them to make a determination as to who should emerge as the leader of the DA.
Masikubonge Ngonyama.
Enkosi kakhulu, ngiyabonga sisi.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu there, giving us some forward look into the predicted outcomes of the Democratic Alliance elective conference that takes place this weekend, and SABC News will be giving you full coverage of that.